Thanks, everybody. Thanks.
That was Florida Governor Rick Scott. Toward the end of answering some questions there, he talked about what he said, talked about my job as governor and what his job is in this situation. And one of the things that he included in it is that he hug some of the members of the families of the victims of these kinds of shooting. Governor Rick Scott, the Republican governor of Florida, has done everything he possibly can to make sure that the AR-15 assault weapon is easily obtainable by any mass murderer in America. That has been the mission of Republicans like Rick Scott. The reason that weapon is available in Florida over the counter for anyone 18 years of age to go in and buy is because of politicians like Rick Scott who have made sure, done everything they possibly can to make sure that that weapon is easier to buy than an automobile. Let's listen to this question that was asked of Governor Scott earlier tonight, asking about a 19-year-old having an assault weapon. Let's listen to this.
What business does a 19-year-old have in having an AR-15 specifically? Just your thoughts.
Yeah. We're finding all the facts. There's a thorough investigation going on. The sheriff's department will release exactly what happened and how the individual got a gun, things like that. We'll learn those things, and then we can make it. We can determine in the future, how we continue to make this place safe.
In other words, Igor Volsky, the governor, had absolutely nothing to say about what's a 19-year-old doing with an assault weapon in America. And some of the politicians like Marco Rubio have been saying tonight we don't know that there's any law that could have made this less likely to happen. It seems the question to ask Marco Rubio and Rick Scott is there anything Florida could possibly do to make it any easier for a mass murderer to get an AR-15?
Yeah, what they could do, for instance, is ban assault weapons, which, by the way, Marco Rubio voted against in 2013 when he was in the Senate, when he had a chance to stop this guy from getting his hands on an assault weapon. He said no. I mean, Lawrence, we need to get to a place in America where we have fewer guns. This guy had a lot of guns. He had an assault weapon, and that's why we are where we are today. The problem is the NRA, which donates heavily to Rick Scott, which donates heavily to Marco Rubio, is keeping these politicians from having any kind of real conversation. If we can move on this at all, we got to make sure they send back the blood money, because frankly, they have blood on their hands, the NRA has blood on their hands, and if we care about our children, if we care about their lives, we got to have a serious conversation.
I mean, Kurt, isn't the question for Marco Rubio and Rick Scott, have you not, in fact, done everything you possibly can to make it as easy as possible for this mass murderer to get that weapon of mass murder?
I think that's precisely right, and that's the way to frame it. Because they'll be able to say, because it's true, that no single regulation we can enact, no single law we can enact could have definitely prevented this. That's, of course, true of any terrible thing that we as a society or government try to fix. But exactly as you say is it. That has been the goal since they got rid of the assault weapons ban in 2004 to sell as many of these as they can, because they are expensive and they sell very well. We sell in the United States 1.5 million of these AR-15 and AR-15 type weapons a year. 1.5 million. We only sell 6 million cars a year. That's an enormous number of weapons that the Republican Party, in the thrall of the NRA the last 25 years, as they had never been before, as the NRA gets more and more extreme, has absolutely been pursuing. And of course, let's not forget, we have a president in Donald Trump whose most stalwart Republican constituency from the early on in his presidential campaign was the NRA.
And
Can I say something about Marco Rubio here?
Go ahead.
You'll remember this is the guy who ran for re-election after the Orlando shooting and said, oh, I got to serve my community, I got to serve my community, has done absolutely nothing to protect his community from gun violence since then, and is now tweeting and pretending how much he cares about it. But what he really cares about is his A-plus rating from the NRA and making sure his political career is on track. That's all he cares about, and that's all Republicans who aren't going to have any kind of conversation about moving us to fewer guns care about. They care about the money they get from the NRA, their political careers, not the lives of their constituents. And American voters have to wake up, frankly, and vote these people out of office.